Greg Farrow from the Packet Pushers here. Today I want to talk about lock-in. Yep, lock-in. What happens when you buy a product and you're locked in? You feel like you've had your choices taken away. In this episode, I wanted to look at the reality of lock-in. At the end of the day, anything you do is a lock-in, and you've got to make some smart choices. And those choices are yours. Okay, so let's start off by talking about what is lock-in. So lock-in is about the ability to not make your technology choices freely and openly. You want to be able to make any choice, any when, anyhow, to find the best solution for your problem. But of course, the vendors or the products that you've got resist change. They don't want to be changed. Maybe they're too complex to learn a new product. Maybe it's because there's standards in this particular product, or there's a feature in this particular product that you feel you've got to keep going with the same product, even though you know there's a better one out there. So lock-in happens when your choices are restricted for just about any reason. And that's literally all I can say about what lock-in is. Really, what's the most valuable is why lock-in. Sometimes these reasons are technical standards. You know, there are standards that need to be implemented and vendors choose not to support a standard, or they develop a new feature that you want, right? That nobody else has. And or there's some sort of limitation. Maybe their hardware does something smarter or better. Sometimes it's about developing a new feature or a new functionality that only one vendor has. Now, in theory, that promotes competition, but it also promotes lock-in. And indeed, there's an incentive there for vendors to pursue innovation and deliver you with new features so that they can lock you in, so that they've got features better than somebody else's, and that prevents you from leaving. See, lock-in is all about preventing you leaving once we've gotten in there, right? Now, vendors do create lock-in as a real product choice. They literally design it in, because if you're a vendor making products, you are substantially motivated to do this. You're substantially motivated to lock customers in, to capture revenue, and to capture unearned profits. And when I say unearned, I mean literally, if you're captive to an audience, to somebody, they can now shift to making substandard products and earn profits that they've not earned, that they haven't achieved, right? They get them because by de facto. And they can also lower their own internal costs by retaining customers. Keep in mind, a customer that's locked in, you don't need more salespeople, you don't need more pre-sales. That cost is removed, so now there's just higher profits. So lock-in has two effects. One is it captures revenue that it might not otherwise have got. It keeps unearned profits, so profits come in with no extra costs around producing new products or modern products, as we've seen substantially in enterprise OT over the last 20 years. It's much cheaper just to not innovate and keep selling the same old stuff than to change anything around. And it also lowers cost because you don't got less sales costs. You should understand this and make smart choices, because now you know why vendors pursue lock-in. It's in their own interest. Every choice locks you in, though, somehow. So I'm going to paint a story here. Every choice you make in life locks you into that decision. Every decision you make has consequences, is the simplest form. But let's talk about a car metaphor, because car metaphors work so well. Let's say you have two kids and you're going out to buy a car. You buy a car that fits 4 people. The car's really good at fetching groceries and doing the school run, but not so useful for hauling big loads. So the day that you need to chop down all the trees in your garden, you need to haul them to the dump, you may actually find that the car that you bought for doing the school run is not the right thing. So you've made a choice that fits, say, 80% of your needs. You have to have a car. You can't not have one. So the car you buy is the best choice you can make, but you're locked into that decision. Is that a bad thing, or is that a good thing? Which leads to the discussion around why lock-in hurts, right? And the reason is the vendors love lock-in, right? As I said before. And guarantees return, customers for upgrades. You get maintenance for the longer they can put that box on the deck. You get maintenance revenue and other recurring revenue. Increasingly, vendors are turning to licensing. They're going to have to build loyalty with the customer. Otherwise, they're not going to sign up for subscription revenues. So this implicit in this is that lock-in is going to get much worse over time. And vendors will use language like customer loyalty, forming partnerships with our customers or partnerships with other partners, and talking about shared values. Most of that is just words. It's literally a dark pattern psychology take on, if you give customers some imaginary value, they'll perceive some imaginary value back. As we move forward into the cloud-based era, relationships matter less and less, right? But mainly this idea of partnerships or loyalty is designed to reinforce you for feeling good about what becomes a bad decision pretty soon afterwards. Complexity is a very good tool for lock-in. It's very useful as a sales tool. If something is complex, the vendor has to come out to explain things to you, and they get salespeople in front of you. Those salespeople get to form relationships, and then there's dark pattern. Humans want to be social. They feel the need to make other people happy, and salespeople leverage that as part of solving the problem. They can twist the sale, and this is very much a tool that large vendors use because they've got deep pockets and very high profit margins, so they can afford to throw salespeople at a complex solution. Complexity itself creates lock-in opportunities. Look at storage arrays and networking. They're the leading vendors of this. The more complex you can make these technologies, the more locked in you get. And in fact, there's an anti-pattern here. There's no point in vendors to make a simplistic product, because complexity actually creates lock-in. And you've got to be careful about that as a customer. Customers are very quick to believe that vendors say that a product is complex. It's like you want to believe that your technology is complex. So when the vendor says, oh, it's very complex, a lot of people just nod their heads and go, yeah, and you're not thinking to yourself, actually, no, this is really simple. We've been doing it for 20 years. Why is this hard? And true, and I want to emphasize this, complexity was historically a thing. There was a day when technology was the first thing we ever did. And, there was a reason that Unix is so hard to use. There's a reason why technologies were hard to use. But by and large, innovation and change means it's gone forward. Now, I want to pick a particular example of lock-in here, and it's hardware compatibility lists. Companies like Nutanix and VMware are really big on this enforcing hardware compatibility lists. Cisco in the same boat, HPE to a less extent, but I'm going to focus on Nutanix and VMware here. They're limiting the hardware platform that their software-only product will run on as a way of controlling you, the customer, literally locking you in to a strategically locked platform. The VMware and Nutanix want to control what hardware you're on, partly because they want to control you as an account. They don't want you making your own choices. They want to be in control of your choices so that they can control you. And it also allows them to control competitors. So if Nutanix and VMware say you can only run it on this hardware, they can make sure that that hardware compatibility list doesn't go to a competitor who might displace them later on. Or it might not run on hardware, which is a threat to their licensing model. It might not be a vendor that they want to share business space with because they're about to stamp up. There's a whole lot of reasons, right? This is part of the reason they want control of you, the customer, by forcing you into a defined strategy. And they also want control of the suppliers of that system as well. And that's part of what the HCL stands for. Now, there are advantages too if they're guaranteeing it to work on a particular hardware. But the reality is that lots and lots of products work fine on all of these products, really, honestly. But there's no reason for these products not to work with anybody's system, and no reason for them not to support it either, by the way. So the effects of lock-in is that customers start to believe that they must do what they're told. They're not allowed to think creatively or follow the vendor directions, and that's a control of you. Vendors want to control which other vendors are in the mix, but they don't want to partner with vendors that compete or add too much value to their product, because their product becomes devalued. And the whole goal here, of course, is to prevent the customer from true choices and to capture unearned profits, easy profits, right? So how do we mitigate lock-in? Well, it's up to you. Accept that lock-in is inevitable. You have to have this acceptance. As we talked about in the car metaphor, lock-in is an inevitable outcome of any choice. The only tips that I can give you to avoid lock-in is to buy replaceable. So if you buy something, make sure you buy it and be aware of how to replace it. What's the rollout? Not only how easy is it to roll in, how easy is it to roll it out? And this is where the idea behind microservices comes from, and this new DevOps type idea. It makes it much easier to replace components in your infrastructure. That's your software as well as your physical infrastructure. Buy cheap. The cheaper something is, the easier it is to replace. Don't believe what vendors tell you about high prices. And another way to achieve cheap without actually cheaping out is to buy small. Be ready to spend a little testing something, actually evaluating it and learning out all the ugly bits. Spend a little before committing to a bigger, fuller, more complete purchase. And be willing to fail here. Be willing to throw away the small purchase. Avoid long-term commitments. Vendors love to sign you up for long-term commitments. It's about reducing cost. Salespeople get strongly rewarded for locking customers into long-term partnerships. Sole supplier discount. We'll give you an extra 5% discount if you agree to stay with us or if you buy this much. These agreements always look attractive up front, but really they're about locking you in. Again, it's about reducing the vendor's costs. Maybe they pass some of that reduction onto you to make it look attractive, but generally they prevent innovation inside your own organization. Buy smart is really the only advice I can give you. End users should have the best staff so that you can make smart buying decisions. You don't trust a car dealer when you're out buying a car, right? Everything that comes out of the car dealer's mouth is very much cynically aligned. You should be very careful. You should not trust an IT vendor on the same basis. You should have the smarts to know what you're buying and why you're buying it. I'm Greg Farrow from the Packet Pushers. This is a bit of a quick take on Lockin. I'm in favour of Lockin. There are times when you should have it, but there's also times when you need to be smart. You can find this and many more fine free podcasts over at packetpushers.net. And if you've got some feedback, don't hesitate to get in touch. Leave a comment on the blog post or down below on the YouTube. Thanks for listening, and don't forget to subscribe.